Welcome everyone to the Future Proof Podcast. Thanks for joining. Today I'm with Syed. He is the owner of SHIZA. Today's guest is building something that literally could change and redefine how we think about artificial intelligence as we know it. So thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, it's awesome to be on.
Yeah. Well, why don't you... I know that we just kind of touched a little bit about, but what is SHIZA? So SHIZA stands for Shared Human Intellect Zonal Agents, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Tell me what that means.
So the acronym itself, right, Shared Human, that's, I think, fairly obvious. And then the I, which is the intellect, that is our whole thesis around where the future is going to be more about the intellect than it is about labor. And we'll get into what we mean by the emphasis on labor and where the world is going to end up going. And then, of course, the zonal agents are essentially sequestered or segmented agents that are compartmentalized. So we're giving individuals the ability to have ownership, complete sovereign ownership of their own AI agents. So this is where this whole notion of the acronym of Shared Human Intellect Zonal Agents comes in.
Got it. So now, what's the difference between what you're doing and, let's just say, someone going into one of the bigger LLMs that can do projects or set up different chats, things like that? So what are you doing that's different than what's already kind of made there?
Yeah, so just a very small little difference, which is that when everyone today is interacting with any of these LLMs, these large language models, essentially every inference, every prompt, every query that you're essentially communicating with them, you're giving them your data, right? You're giving them your information, you're giving them your experience, which in our thesis is going to be the most valuable asset of the future. So you're essentially training them. I mean, we've made this mistake. We've seen this mistake that we had made with with Web 2.0 and social media. The question is that the same mistake we want to make with AI? And this is the real fear that everyone, including the powers that be, some of the largest players within the AI world, right? That's what they talk about. When we talk about the Skynet scenario, which is consolidation of power, consolidation of everyone's intellect, everyone's intelligence into these centralized entities, is that really where we want to be? Is that the world that we're looking for? Because that will lead to this dystopian future. What we're doing is we're saying that if it's your experience, your own AI, then you should have ownership, complete ownership of your AI, as opposed to renting the AI from these existing centralized players. So what we're doing is we're introducing the notion of decentralized artificial intelligence, right, or DEAI. So the big difference between us and everyone else is that in that instance, you're giving them your information and then you're going to have to rent it back because ultimately you'll be at their mercy. Whereas with us, we're giving you complete ownership of your own AI, which aligns perfectly with our slogan with SHIZA, which is own your AI before AI owns you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you say, or on your website when I was reading, it says you help people own and monetize their own AI. So for listeners, how does that kind of actually work for them?
So the working of it is fairly easy to understand. I mean, today you can do that by creating your own agents. OpenAI had introduced this concept with the advent of when they had first released 4.0, the API access for that, when they had introduced this notion of the assistants that they had, where you can build out your own AI agents and people can essentially subscribe to them. So the monetization, to understand that part, that's not that difficult, right? That's just, all right, you have your own agent and someone can essentially subscribe to it. Great. The problem is that when you're leveraging these LLMs to build out those agents, it's only a matter of time that agent of yours is going to become absolutely of no value, because the parent LLM that you're asking for access to, that already has access to your information. It's just going to render you useless, which is essentially the fear that a lot of people have with every single version of OpenAI and their API that gets released. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of startups. I'm not even talking about individuals, right? Startups that essentially end up going out of business because it's like, okay, cool. This is what we're building for. OpenAI just released this, and now you have a much more powerful model that you're able to do so. So what we're doing is we're giving people the ability to have ownership of their agents, and then they can monetize off of that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I think that's key. I mean, I've always gone back to and really thought not this way about AI. I've always thought in the other realm of like certain things with the businesses that I own and employees using certain, AI tools and putting sensitive information in them and then that getting leaked and, that kind of stuff, but I really never put it into a perspective of how you guys are looking at, which I think is fascinating. So, no, I think that's really, 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 really cool. So, on an everyday user kind of like experience when they log in, when they start with SHIZA, kind of what does that look? What are you going to be doing to get it started? Are you having to feed this LLM a lot of like your own personality, what you want it to do? Is it more prompting or kind of how does that feel?
So think about, I'll sort of paint the picture for you, right? And imagine where this conversation that we're having, right? We want to give access to everyone to be to be a participant in this conversation because there is knowledge that's being shared, and that knowledge is beyond data, right? The reason why you're talking to Syed Hussain and not just getting access to data, which you had done before. You went onto SHIZA's website, you took a look at that information, but you want to talk to the person that's behind it because you want to understand what the reasoning behind that, because that goes beyond the data, right? That is what we call the experience. So I am now sharing my experience with Alex, and as a result of it, Alex's experience is going to expand. All of that currently is being stored inside of your so Saeed's output mechanisms are his is through his mouth and his tongue and the voice that's coming out of it, and Alex's input mechanisms are his ears, which is where that sound is going in through, and then it's being processed and it's being stored inside of his, what we call your biological repository, your biological knowledge store, which is your physical brain. So that's stored in Alex's brain, and now as a result of it, you've got all of these neurons that are within that brain that are now that are learning and enhancing. And it's a collective of your experience and my experience, which is going to enhance the output of what's going to come out of Alex. And as a result of it, the podcast becomes a digital mechanism that everyone else, your audience, will learn from. Okay. Now, imagine a world in which all of these inputs and outputs are being stored not just inside of your physical repository, but what if we can create a digital repository, right? A digital version of your brain that is essentially a collective of all of your daily experiences on an hourly basis, on a minute by minute basis, on a real time basis as these input outputs come in. We sort of do that today, right? We do have certain variations of that where, for example, if we're in a meeting, almost every meeting that two people are having now, it's not two people that are attending it, but at least three people where that third person is that digital persona that's there in the form of a note taker. And then that note taker is keeping all of that information, and then you're going back and gaining access to it, right? We collect all of our communications inside of our emails, right? Our social media, our messaging platforms, all of that. Well, what if you can have your own agents that are in there and are collecting all of that information from your knowledge stores, from your repositories, from your email, from your social media, from your messaging, from your meetings that you're having, from even your everyday interactions through your visuals that you'll have through, let's say, like your Meta glasses or something like that, right? That you're taking in. Well, great. If you can have that, now all of a sudden you're digitally capturing your day-to-day. Well, the concern then in that instance becomes, well, holy shit, Saeed, that's a lot of private information that I'm giving away, right? So I want to make sure that that's essentially me basically. That's the equivalent of me walking around naked in front of the entire world, right? Because they have access to everything. Why would I want to give access to everyone for that? Well, that's what we're doing today, right? But now imagine, instead of all of this information going inside of a large language model, what if all of this information now is stored inside of Alex's individualized language model, your ILM, or as we like to call it, your ilm, right? Which ilm is, in Arabic, means knowledge, right? So it's an encapsulation of all of your knowledge. So then Alex's experiences are captured inside of Alex's ilm, and no one else except Alex has access to it. And if Saeed wants access to Alex's ilm, then he needs to get permissioned access from Alex, and every single time I'm inferring upon it, then Alex gets to monetize on that. So this future is where we are going to start to shift away from being what we call labor driven, because today, in today's world, we're a labor based economy, right? Whether it's physical labor, manual labor, creative labor, intellectual labor, it's labor nevertheless that we monetize on, right? We earn that in the form of wages, right? You mentioned you've got your employees. Well, your employees are are your one of your biggest costs, and that's in the form of labor. Well, what happens if that labor can be algorithmically replaced in the form of an agent? Well, when that happens, and that will happen, right? When that happens, you better make sure that you have ownership of that agent that's algorithmically replacing your labor, as opposed to a centralized entity like an OpenAI, like a Google, like an Anthropic, for example. So this is where the ownership of from the ilm, which is your entire brain, right? Your digital brain. From there, you're extracting out what we call intellects, which are custom knowledge stores, right? So specific information that you're creating in the form of agents that people can interact with. So this isn't access to the entirety of your brain, but it's access to certain pockets of knowledge that you have that are built based off of your experience, which is where the value is. So what we're saying is that in this future, the value is going to shift from being labor driven to being what we call intellect driven. And that is what we call this post-agentic world, which is going to be run through post-labor economics, because that's how we need to start thinking about, and that's essentially the infrastructure that we're building out with SHIZA. So you had asked the question before I could give you a simple answer. It was important to sort of lay the foundation for this, right? So to go back to your question around how would a user experience that, right? Do they have to prompt it? Well, the way that they would do it is it should be something, technology should be something which is seamless to them, right? It's like they don't even know that it's there. And we're sort of kind of doing that already. I had mentioned things like your meta glasses. I had mentioned things like, like this conversation that we're having right now, it's being recorded. I'll have my cell phone with me. In there will be what is your SHIZA companion, right, which is constantly listening to what it is that you're saying. There's all kinds of hardware devices that are coming in that people are already building out, like the pendants that you can wear that's collecting all that. You're getting a collective of all of that. That information then is stored inside of your ilm. From that ilm, you can extract out your intellects, and you can create your own agents. And today, we have what we call the SHIZA developer, which is a very easy to use drag and drop tool that allows you to build out your own AI agents literally in a matter of minutes, right? Today, it's more drag and drop. Tomorrow, it's going to be completely just voice enabled, where you say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want you to build it. And it's going to build it for you. And these are the kind of sort of that future of where we see Iron Man speaking to Jarvis and telling him, hey, do this, and this, and then it happens. That future is, believe it or not, it's actually not that far out.
I know. It's crazy. Because, I mean, I've never even thought about kind of where you're going with this, and it's absolutely fascinating. I'm going to be talking to you after this for sure to kind of get more information. So in retrospect too, so I mean, it's like something, if you want to monetize or get all your information, someone could just use this product as literally just a brain dump, so they don't even have to really kind of think about remembering things or tasks, or as little and as easy as that, all the way down to literally just trying to put your entire life, all your experiences in there, all your knowledge, if you're a world-class marketer, and then, trying to basically monetize all of your knowledge to people that want to learn, marketing, or, vice versa, whatever you're great at. And I think that's crazy. What's one of, with users that you have or experience or scenarios that have already been using it, what is one of the more interesting kind of like case uses of it so far?
So look, so even in the example that you just gave, right, of the marketer or any kind of an individual, as individuals are as good as we are, we're limited by certain factors that no matter what we try to do, there's no going around it, right? And that is one of that major factors, or that major limitation is time, right? There's only 24 hours in the day, at least on this planet, and there's and there's really nothing we can do. We can't expand that. And there's only one of me and there's only one of you. So right now, when Syed is speaking with Alex, everyone else gets to take a back seat, right? Whether it's my wife, or whether it's my colleagues, or whether it's my kids, because right now we are exclusive to one another. That's just the reality of it, right? But if anyone has sort of seen or communicated with me, and they've known me for a while, they're also going to know that 90 to 95% of the things that I'm saying in these new conversations, right? Like just like how you're like, oh my God, I have my head blown right now in terms of the stuff that I'm learning because it's very novel. It's novel to you because you're hearing it for the first time. For me, it's not novel to me. Like I said, 90 to 95, and I'm being very generous here, of the stuff that I'm saying is repetitive, right? So if it's repetitive, there should be no reason. There should be a much better, more efficient way for us to be able to deal with one another, right? We can't increase the time, right? The limited time that we have, but we can absolutely be far more efficient in how we utilize that time. So imagine, instead of Alex and Syed speaking to each other, in which there's really not going to be very much of the novel things that are going to come out of my mouth, what if you could access Syed's intellect as opposed to accessing physical Syed himself, right? So in that instance, what you would do is you would just get access to Syed's intellect, and it's going to be the digital version of Syed speaking to, the digital version of Alex, or the physical version of Alex, right? You can have human to agent communication, or you can have agent to agent communication. And in that instance, how much, like today, you had to go through the website, review the website and whatnot. And even then, there's a lot of information that's on our website. I can almost guarantee that you didn't go through all of the nits and grits and the nooks and crannies of everything that's on the website, right?
Yeah.
And why should you? It's a very inefficient process, right? We're information overload right now. What if you could just go onto the website and, instead of communicating with that, ask the direct questions that Alex and all of his experiences as an interviewer, as a marketer, would know exactly what to ask, right? Written content doesn't do that, but a trained intellect, right, in the form of an algorithmic agent, can absolutely do that. You can have that conversation. You can get that. And then when you're walking in, you don't have to ask Syed the things that that you're already educated on, because it's like you're walking into this knowing Syed for the past 5 years, right? And then being able to have that conversation. How much more efficient is that going to make us as being human beings? So one of the things that we're seeing quite a bit of right now is some of those use cases, which is the lowest hanging fruit. Now, what I just explained to you, that's like a digital twin, right? Okay, that's also something which, and I really don't like using that word digital twin because it's kind of annoying, because the problem is most people tend to think that it's my digital twin. No, it's not your digital twin, because your digital twin implies that it's owned by you. Right now, every single conversation that you're having with it, essentially it's replica of you, right? The front end is certainly your digital twin, but the back end is not owned by you. That's going into these large language models that are being trained on what it is that they're. So that's really, for us, that's the big danger, and that's our whole thesis, is to solve for that and build out that post-agentic world. The post-agentic infrastructure for this post-agentic world, and building an entire post-labor economics financial model around that. And this is where the convergence of Web 3 and Web 2, right, start to come together and provide the solutions for.
Yeah, so I mean, you just talked about A3 and A2 with AI and like Web 3. Like, where do you see kind of the biggest opportunities right now in that overlap?
So that's a good question. There has been a lot of people have been jaded by Web 3, crypto and whatnot. And I have these conversations with people all the time. What people don't understand is that in order for you to get to to get to point B, you have to get through point A first, right? And that ends up becoming a prerequisite. One of the biggest sort of criticisms or cynicisms, right, that people have had with Web3 and blockchain is essentially the smarky and snidey remarks around, you guys are essentially a solution looking for a problem. And my answer to them is simple. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. And you know what that problem is? That problem is centralized AI, right? So in order for you to solve for that problem through decentralized AI, Web3 is the solution that problem is in need of. So Web3 is the rails that you build on top of. But from a use case perspective, I think it's the lowest hanging fruit is on the Web 2 side. So there's no need for us to architect a solution which is exclusive to either Web 3 or Web 2. You can build out the solution to be something which fits across either the Web 3 or the Web 2 but obfuscate, right? The all of the complexity that's there, right? Abstract that away so that people, it should be for you to be able to use it. It's that's what's on the back end. So from a end user's perspective, it should be something seamless. They shouldn't have to know, okay, I have to create this, I have to do this. If we are talking about agentic AI, if we are talking about automated solutions around these things, why can't we make it so seamless that even my grandmother could use it? And that's essentially why we're taking the approach that we're taking, which is let's solve for the Web 2 pieces and continue to build on top of the Web 3 rails so that we can continue to solve for the larger problem of decentralization through there while providing the Web 2 most lowest hanging fruit to existing businesses and individuals that could consume it.
Got it. My mind went to thinking about, is this something that you actually see maybe even not immortalizing somebody, but really capturing who they are, what they're thinking, how they thought, and all the thoughts. My mind goes to even like my son. He's 3 years old right now. Obviously, he remembers me now, but if something happened to me in a couple years when he was 18, 19, 20 years old, he probably wouldn't have that clear of a memory of his father. Is this something that could do, when if it was out there, or is that something that wouldn't be able to access from somebody like your loved ones or something like that? Or am I kind of going off the rails there?
No, no, no. You're spot on. So imagine a world, right? What is it that we're saying, right? And for us, when we talk about this, it scares people quite a bit because I'm generally I'm a straight shooter, no bullshit guy, and I'm gonna give it to you straight. Our thesis is that jobs are gonna be a thing of the past, right? Like this is not something like the technologies that we're building here. I was on a panel and someone had asked me this question around, you're building a disruptive technology, right? And I say, I don't know if I agree with that. I wouldn't call it a disruptive technology because disruption is too soft of a term for what it is that we're building. I call this a destructive technology because this is what it will lead to. This will absolutely lead to destruction of the labor markets. It will absolutely lead to destruction of jobs. And that freaks people out. Because they're like, well, holy shit, what's going to happen? You're talking about destruction of humanity, right? And that's where I have to make the distinction that destruction of jobs is not the destruction of humanity, right? Remember one thing, destruction is oftentimes the catalyst for creation, right? But there is no creation without the destruction. So if that 65 million years ago, if that asteroid didn't hit didn't strike our planet, and the dinosaurs didn't get destroyed, we wouldn't be around right now, right? Or certainly we wouldn't be having the conversation that we're having right now, right? So destruction is absolutely the catalyst for creation. So yes, we're going to have jobs destruction, and as we start to have these jobs destruction, what this is going to lead to is a mentally just fundamental paradigm shift in the way that we think of things, right? So if jobs get destroyed, today, that's how we earn our value, right? In the form of money that we get, right? Which is what we use to measure our value. Well, if that gets destroyed, then what's the solution, right? I'll tell you what's not the solution. UBI, Universal Basic Income, is absolutely not the solution, right? That's one of those things when I said that, destruction often leads to creation. The times that it doesn't, right, is these kinds of solutions like UBI, right? That is utter destruction. So if UBI is not the solution and labor goes the way of the dinosaurs, then we have to fundamentally rethink how we approach money, how we approach value, right? And anything that has value is what we consider an asset. These assets then are going to be today, right? They're the most valuable asset that an individual is going to have in the future. It's not going to be data. Data is going to be commoditized. It's not going to be LLMs. LLMs are going to be commoditized. It's not going to be these agents because, like, as we said before, right, agents are going to end up getting commoditized. So if that's the case, then the real question becomes, then what is the real asset of the future if all of these things which we consider to be assets today are commodities of tomorrow? What we're saying that asset ends up becoming is the novel human experience, right? So if that ends up becoming the most valuable asset that's associated and built on the individual's experience, then taking that, right, in the form of these intellects and turning those into actual digital assets that people can access, that people can be able to monetize off of, that becomes the most valuable component of this future economy. So now if you have this valuable component, your ilm, like I said, that is novelly yours, no one else has access to it. Well, when you pass away, that then becomes an asset that is inherited by whoever it is, by your next of kin that you would give them to. So now they will be able to monetize off of your experiences, continue to build out these intellects based off of those, and others will be able to partake and to be able to learn from them. And every single time they're interacting with it, your family, your next of kin, right, whoever is the new owners of that particular asset, they get to they continue the legacy. So you're not crazy at all. You're actually talking about what the future looks like, and these are the kind of things that we're actually thinking about and building right now.
I mean, my mind even goes to like holograms and projections of you, and like it's crazy. As you're talking, my mind's just like spinning with other things. But yeah, I mean that's crazy. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's obviously a hard pill to swallow for most people. But if you look back into our evolution and kind of what we're supposed to be on this earth for, it's not to slave away at a 9-to-5 job and not do anything with our lives and be completely unfulfilled and work for a paycheck until we're 65 years old and then die 20 years 15 years later of cancer and not enjoy your life. So I don't think that the deconstruction of the job or the labor market is a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing because, like you just said, then actually people can live their lives and do what they're supposed to be on this planet for. They're just going to have to think about it a little bit different of a way, right?
Well, look, I mean, the thing that people tend to think about is they're like, well, this job's destruction, right? As I like to call it, that's going to lead to chaos, and that will lead to massive civil unrest. And temporarily, right, in the short term, there will be pain, just like it is with anything, right? However, in the long term, it will absolutely be for the better, because what this will also lead to is this will lead to mass abundance. Because if you take a look, why will it lead to mass abundance? Well, let's take a look at this from the perspective of economics and finance. If you look at the cost that goes into building anything, right? If you're looking at any line item on a P&L, on a balance sheet, the most expensive line item on there is what? It's the cost of labor. And that labor is human driven. You eliminate that cost, and all of a sudden it has a reverberating effect across not just that balance sheet, but other balance sheets across other institutions as well, right? So what that leads to is it leads to a massive collapse in price, and the reason why it leads to massive collapse in prices because now things are that much cheaper to make. Well, then if they're that much cheaper to make, then now all of a sudden people don't necessarily have to strive to work as much, right? Then all of a sudden the kind of things like the first world problems that we like to talk about, right, like not having access to, if for us, if it's I'm counting myself, right, and in an Indian who's India, right, in the blistering heat of the desert of Rajasthan, who, if it's like 75 degrees in my house, to me it's like it's the end of the world. It's like, come on guys, what's wrong, right? Like the other day our AC stopped working, and it took the maintenance guys like 2 days to come. I was losing my mind. I'm like, come on guys, what's going on, right? These are first world problems, right? These are first world problems for us to have. If you take a look at people in India, and I was there for the summer, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing, like how their ability to survive. So human beings, right? It's these things that we tend to take for granted, right? So in this future abundant society, it's the reason why I can afford an AC here versus in India is because we have the infrastructure for that, right? Like the cost of these things is minimal. So in this post-agentic world where the cost of labor across the board, this won't be something which is unique to a geographic location, right? But this will be something that will trickle across on a global scale, where now you start to have mass abundance, where all of a sudden, just like, just here, to have a car in, India, like, man, you got to be someone if you've got a car. Here, every clown has got a car, right? And we measure ourselves on, oh man, you're driving a Honda, you're driving a Toyota, well, look at this, right? Even within that, right, we're trying to differentiate ourselves. So in this period of mass abundance, right, the cost of things that we have is not going to be that great. This is why UBI is a silly solution, but the value will actually come where everyone else has the basics. They're already met because everyone's got their own agentic, not just software solution, but a hardware solution for it as well in the form of bots and and all of these companions within their house, within their households, that their cost is not going to be an issue, but people will want to differentiate themselves and one up one another, because that's who we are. We're creatures of competition. So as a result of that, the most valuable thing that we're going to be competing on is not necessarily going to be money in the sense that how we know money today, but it's going to be more around our ability to be able to differ. It's more going to be around a rewarding mechanism in which we're creating these point systems, and this is where the whole aspect of, again, the philosophy and the ethos of Web3 start to come into play and marry and converge with the world of AI.
Were you kind of now talking? I'm actually like looking at your website right now. Are you talking about the ITT there, the tokenized transactions, or is that? So explain that really quickly.
So think about what I just said about mass abundance, right, and the cost of capital breaking down, right, and going down significantly to the point where today, where the smallest transaction that I can make today is I'm limited to 1/100th of a dollar, right, which is a penny. I can't go any lower than that, right? There's no mechanism for me to be able to pay through that, right? I can't pay someone in, a tenth of a penny, right? When you're talking about this period of mass abundance, that's going to end up becoming a problem, because what you're going to have is you're going to have not small transactions, you're going to actually have micro transactions and nano transactions that are going. In order for you to be able to solve for those, right, and to be able to resolve those and settle on those, you're going to need to have a settlement system that does these transactions on a micro granular level, right? These kinds of micro transactions are exactly the kinds of things that crypto rails solve for, right? So for example, take a Bitcoin, right? So today everyone's like, oh my god, I can't afford a Bitcoin, it's over $100,000, right? That train has passed. No, not really. You can't afford a Bitcoin, but you know what you can afford, and anyone on this planet can afford, is a Satoshi. A Satoshi is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, right? So anyone can afford that, right? Those are the kind of micro transactions that you can do. Then the next question is the speed, the finality of the transactions that you're doing today. If I were to send any kind of capital to someone, right? First of all, today it's Columbus Day, so it's a banking holiday. I'm screwed. I can't send anyone anything. So if I wanted to send something to let's say to my parents in India on, let's say, Friday, right? Last Friday. So long as I did it by 4:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'd be okay. But if I did it a minute after that, he's not getting the money. First of all, the money's not leaving my bank account. My money that I have, it's not leaving the bank account until at least Monday. Sorry, not Monday, because it's Columbus Day, right? At least Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then even then, after it leaves, I still have to wait 3 days for him to for him to actually receive it, right? Why should we now imagine this world that I'm talking about, where things are being settled instantly, and you have all of these transactions, and you have these agent to agent transactions? Do you think we're going to have that kind of time to be able to do so? So no, that's impossible to do on these outdated fiat based rails that we have, which is the structure of the current financial settlement system that we have, which is why crypto rails serve the perfect solution for that, right? And then the settlement mechanism. So we're going to start to shift away from being these centralized macro economies into this post-agentic world, which is more about decentralized microeconomies. And every single one of these decentralized microeconomies, it's going to have its own rewarding mechanism, its own incentivization mechanism, and that is where those tokens come in. So this is what we have the SHIZA token, which is essentially not just a transactional mechanism, but also a utility in the form of the most granular component of it being what we call the neuron, right? So the SHIZA token is a dual token model, where you have the SHIZA token, which is the financial instrument, right? That will be the tradable asset that's going to be on the exchanges once we launch it. but then the utility of it that people can actually earn, and as they're interacting within the system and the rewarding points-based mechanism that's going to be in there. If you recall from what I was talking about earlier, how people are going, there's going to be other forms of incentivization and rewarding mechanism. That is what those neurons are.
Interesting. That's I mean, it's obviously probably hard for people to grab their brain around, but I mean, I was even like reading an article, and it wasn't that articulate or that broken down, but it was just going into like very top, high level discussion about AI and what it's going to do to change the world, and how obviously, like you alluded to, the more AI comes out, the better things get. The more we utilize it, labor drops. Then if labor dropping, then things are going to be cheaper. And then obviously if things are going to be cheaper, people have to make less money. And so it was kind of alluding to what you were talking about, but you're just taking it like, a million times, further and more in depth. So,
Well, here's the thing. Here is the thing I will say, right? We're at a crossroads, right? So there are the doomers that are there that talk about this dystopian world that we're gonna head towards. Now, I'm an optimist. I'm not a doomer. I am a psychotic entrepreneur, so I guess I have to be an optimist towards the future. But I will give them credit in terms of what they're saying is not wrong. That is absolutely a possibility. The real question is really upon us, right? Is we can either be heading towards a dystopian future, which is where centralized AI will lead us towards, or we can head down towards a much better alternative, right? Which is where decentralized AI will take us, and that's the part that we're embarking upon to build a better future.
I love it. So I'm looking at the website. I mean, are you guys kind of how does someone get more information? How do they find you? How do they get in touch with you? How do they use it? Kind of just go over that super quick.
Yeah, so check us out on the website. There, you can reach out to us. Info at sorry, not info. It's hello SHIZA.ai. You could shoot me. Feel free to shoot me a note. Syed at SHIZA.ai. That's spelled SYED at SHIZA.ai. You guys could hit me up on Twitter. Well, is Serial Tech X, SERIAL Serial Tech TECH and then X. So Serial Tech X. You guys can hit me up there. And LinkedIn. I'm pretty available.
Well, I'm definitely going to have you back on because I don't think we've probably even scratched the surface of this conversation. So I really appreciate your time tonight.
No, like I said, Alex, anytime, man. These conversations, I'm a dummy, right? And that's one of my powers is the fact that as a dummy, I can explain concepts in a very, very dumb way. Every single time I do this, it makes me slightly less dumb. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I will say one thing: so there is if amongst those who would be potential. We are looking for partners in the space. We are looking for strategic investors in the space. We're very early. We're planning on doing a larger raise a bit later, but we're still in our very, very early phase. So if there's folks that are that are interested, certainly hit us up. Now's the opportunity.
So, man, we'll definitely have a conversation after this. If anybody wants to learn more, definitely hit him up. Syed is an open book, super nice, wants to talk about it and obviously push the product out. Go hit SHIZA up and man, we'll be talking soon. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. All right.